You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your mental health questions, so ask away. Today I have with me Amanda Heaton. Amanda, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. So good to be here.
And today we're going to talk about validation, and such an important topic, one that I think we misunderstand. And so we'll launch right into the question. The question is, my friend gets upset about things, and sometimes I genuinely think they're wrong. I've heard I'm supposed to validate their feelings, but it feels fake to say that I agree. How do I validate somebody without agreeing with them? So how do I validate? So let's go back to what is validation? Let's just start there.
Yeah. I mean, I think on a basic level, it's just letting someone feel seen and heard and understood.
Yeah.
That's it.
And letting someone feel seen and heard. And I know this for me, when I feel seen and heard, it is like balm to your soul.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, okay, someone understands me. Someone sees what I'm going through, cares enough to just sit with me in it. So we can see and hear somebody. Why do people confuse then validation with agreement?
I think because so often we care about how we're seen to other people. And so if they're telling us something that's wrong, we automatically just want to defend that or blame them or, pull them out of their emotion and into our own experience. So I think it's just human nature because we care so much about how we're seen with other people because we want to belong.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It goes back to that need. We have such a need to belong. And belonging matters. And so we want to belong. We want to be seen and received well by other people.
Yeah. I think the other thing that comes up for me too is that as humans, we don't like pain. And when we see people that we care about that are in pain, we want so badly to move them out of that pain. So if I can move into fixing your problem or telling you that you're seeing it the wrong way, then I can take you out of that pain.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. So is it, again, our discomfort with their discomfort? I often think that. I work with people in grief, and they will say, people say the dumbest things. And that's not the intention, but the discomfort is really hard. It's hard to witness somebody else's discomfort. Right. It's hard to sit in discomfort. So sometimes we don't do a great job at that. Yeah. Now, how can I validate someone if I totally disagree with what they're doing, they're saying, their thoughts on it?
Yeah. Well, at first I would say 99% of the time you are going to disagree.
That's actually helpful to hear. Turns out you're not going to agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that you're going to feel like they're wrong because everybody has different lenses through which they see and experience the world. So because of that, there's a really, really good chance you're going to see it differently and have different facts around it.
And is that okay?
Yes.
Turns out
it's okay. It's okay because, what we're trying to validate is not the facts of what's happened. And I think that's where people get stuck. But it's that the emotion that they're having makes sense based on the story they're telling themselves.
Okay, so good. So we're not trying to validate the facts, but the emotion they're having makes sense.
Makes sense based on the story or the context that they're giving us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what I agree with is when you said that, the emotions they're having make sense based on the story they're telling themselves. When we get back to the emotion, I often think of it this way, that, I can validate you in this pain because I've felt that before. I know what it feels like to feel misunderstood or to feel afraid or lonely or whatever the case may be. I'm not validating the facts of it, but the pain around it, the emotion around it is what we're getting to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you said the story they're telling themselves. So that, when you said that, I thought, okay, wait, is that invalidating to just be like, well, it's a story they're telling themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but I think again, this is just the information as the listener that you're having of like, look, they have a story, they have a meaning around this that's real for them, that's then causing that emotional experience in them.
Yes. Okay. I think that is really important because the way we could have the exact same thing, you and me, but we are going to experience it totally differently. Right? Yeah. So even like I think of my childhood, I think of an experience that we had, and I had a totally different perception than my brother did. Same experience, but very different perception of the experience, right? Neither one of us were right. Neither one of us were wrong. It was just with my lived experience, I experienced it different than he did. Mm-hmm. So when you say that, I think, the story we're telling ourselves is really based on what we experience. It's not wrong. It's just, it's our perception. It's our lived experience. Yeah,
exactly. I think when it gets difficult is when it feels so opposite, to our experience. So, maybe it'd be helpful to like go through a little scenario, but I think about, let's say that you have a single working mom who was, divorced. And so she's like, busting it, trying to provide for her kids, really navigating really hard emotions at the same time. And her child comes to her, years down the road and says, you were never there for me. Like, you didn't care about me. You just cared about work and your job. And it even feels like you're a narcissist. Like, you're just so into yourself that you totally missed, our childhood. So like as a mom,
those
already,
sting.
Right?
Ooh, even hearing that, I'm like, those are painful words as a mom. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then this child's also like making a diagnosis at the same time. You're a narcissist, and so, and just kind of having that backstory on the mom, you can see how it would be really hard, to not go into defense of like, I was at every soccer game. I, was up till 1 a.m, doing a second job so that I could be there when you got home from school. Like whatever, her story is, she has to put that all to the side and really understand why her child is having that emotional experience, like why their emotional experience makes sense.
Okay. Can we go back to the mother?
Yeah.
Okay. Because putting that to the side is so hard.
It's
like
so hard.
To not defend and not to say, oh, you don't understand what was really going on. And that's where conflict begins, right?
Yeah.
But let's just for a second say, okay, we have to put those emotions to the side and really just try to understand what that child's experience is. But let's say with that mother, what happens with that mother's heart? Like it's just broken and on the floor and we're just like, whatever. Like what do we do there?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I like to think about it is like for that mother, like she's going to anchor into her truth, right? Into her values of like, I love my children. I really did the best with what I could to be there for them. Like that's her truth, right? So she's going to anchor into that. Now her child is down in the pit of despair, feeling like mom doesn't care. And so I don't know if you like are familiar with like rock climbing equipment, but I like to think about her kind of like harnessing up. She's anchoring into this rock to the truth of who she is. And now she's got to descend down into the pit, where her child is and be with him. Now, if she just goes down there and is like, you know what, you don't get it. Like I busted my butt for you. Like, of course I love you. Why would you say these things? That child is still going to feel alone down there. And he's still going to be down in the pit. And she may be able to like ascend back up to her truth, but her child's still going to be down there. So I like to think of validation as that moment when she takes her harness and she hooks it to him. So she has to connect to that child in order to bring him up with her.
Ooh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Probably because I was a former rock climber. I can't consider myself one now, but I love that idea. Harness on, and you're anchored to like your truth. You're not saying, oh, he's totally right. And yep, I'm a narcissist and all I cared about is work. It's not about that, but it's saying I can sit with my truth and I can hold space for his truth and his experience.
Right. And she's also not at the top of the pit saying like, come up here, you're in the wrong place. You know,
do you know how often I think that happens?
So often.
Like, get up here. What's wrong with you down there? Come on. You see what I did. See who I am. Instead, you're going down with them in that pit and saying, attach to my harness.
Exactly.
Gosh, that takes, I mean, I'm thinking of that mother, and I think that takes so much work to be able to say, I'm going to put my own ego, my pain, my defenses aside, and I'm going to get down in that pit with you and anchor to you. How do you do that?
Yeah. And it takes courage. It takes courage.
Yes.
And it takes having that anchor. Like that's the first step. Like she has to anchor in herself, in her own truth, or she's going to get lost in it. If she just jumps in the pit without first anchoring, you know, her rope, you know, to the rock, then she's going to fall too. And they're both going to be down there in the pit. And it's scary down. I mean, there's pain down there. There's pain down there. And it's like what we said at the beginning, like as humans, we try to do everything we can to avoid pain.
That's right.
Or to pull people out of it. But we can't do that until we connect with them first. And that's why that attachment, that healing attachment, like connecting, you know, to, in this example, like her son's harness is really critical.
So critical.
Yeah.
And I also will say, again, I keep going back to the mother because I think that's a really important piece of this is if someone's trying to validate, then when they can put their stuff to the side, it doesn't mean that their pain is gone. Like that needs to be addressed at some point, right? But if you're trying to validate somebody else, it's not saying, I'm going to just shove that away and pretend that didn't hurt. It's actually saying, I'm putting it to the side for safekeeping. I'm going to go back to that. I'm not going to pretend that didn't hurt. I'm going to actually need to do some work around that. But for right now, my goal is to validate and go into that pit with that son and try to anchor to him.
Yeah.
And I again, when you said it takes courage, I think it does. And I also think it takes slowing things down. Because if you heard that, those are fighting words, man. You were a narcissist. All you cared about is work, all these things. Oh, your defenses could get so big so quick.
Yeah.
But if you can slow some things down and say, okay, what is my goal here? My goal is to connect. And I always hear that, connect before correct.
Yeah.
If I can connect before I correct, if it's in work, if it's with my kids, if it's with any relationship, we're going to do a whole lot better if we actually focus on that first before we try to correct, right?
Yeah, it's
and
so
that's
true.
Validation. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And maybe it would be helpful even to talk about what that looks like that actual, you know, connection process, right? Because that's not, you know, the mom going down and being like, you're right. I was selfish. I didn't care about you. You know, that's not validation. Validation is not agreement. Again, it's understanding why the person's emotional experience makes sense. So if that mom's doing it and she's really sitting with this child that's feeling like, you know, she didn't care about him, she might say something like, you know, I hear you saying there were times where I was absent, that you needed more emotional support from me, and I wasn't there to give it.
And I would say that is so beautiful and honestly feels like a superpower.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think there's a reason this listener asked this question, because this isn't done.
Yeah.
We are wired to protect ourselves, right? So what do? We get defensive. We put on that armor and say, no, thank you. You're wrong. I did XYZ. I had 2 jobs, right? You're going through all the things defending instead of sitting with a person in their pain. And to me, I think when you said that, yes, and slowing things down, taking a breath, taking a beat, putting it your hand and having some compassion over your heart and saying, that's hard. This hurts. But right now, my goal is connection. It's not correction. It's not to armor. It's not to defend, but it's to be with somebody.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we get so anxious about like sitting in that pain that it means that we are agreeing with their version of us.
Yes.
And the reality of it is, again, like the nervous system, it needs that empathetic witness. It needs evidence. It needs a corrective emotional experience. And if we try to move too quickly out of that by, saying something like that mother did, but then saying, but remember when I came to all your soccer games, like we're going to undo what we just did. Like they're going to unhook from us. So we have to stay with that.
Yes. So the word but
don't use
don't use it, because it just invalidates everything, right? Because again, what are we doing? We're now trying to justify. Here's why I did this. Here's why this happened.
Yeah. Our view of us matters more in that moment.
That's right.
Than really understanding.
And again, we're defending. We're putting on that armor and saying, all right, you can say whatever you want because you don't understand what my experience was like. It's back to that Stephen Covey principle. Yeah. Seek first to understand and then be understood. If we live by that and we really try to understand before we're saying you understand me, then we can connect.
Yeah.
And I think our fear is that we're not going to have that same grace given to us. We're not going to be understood or validated. So we try to get it from someone that we're actually trying to validate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And it impedes the process if we're just holding like our story, if we're just waiting for like, okay, well, I'm just going to like checklist and do this thing so that I can hurry and share like my side. We're sabotaging the process.
Yes. I don't know if you remember, but we did a couples retreat or, a couple, maybe a couple years ago. And I don't know if you remember the experience that we did, but we had one be the speaker and one be the listener. And we had them talk about an issue that they had. And they didn't have hats, but we had them kind of say, you are the speaker. So now you get to explain. And the listener is just there listening, validating. And when they had those roles, it was easier to do that. But again, if I'm the speaker and you're the speaker and I'm the listener and you're like, no one knows what's going on. But if we can say, oh, now this is the role I'm in, is I'm literally just here to listen. That is what I am here to do. I'm here to listen. I'm here to validate. And then we can switch roles, right? But when we're going back and forth, then we just go in circles and often never end up repairing.
Yeah, and I think that's why we go in circles. Because if we did this first step, like this is the first step, if we did this when there was conflict, if we could just really validate that person's emotional experience, it would change everything.
Everything.
It would change the trajectory of everything. And honestly, sometimes we don't even need to tell our side of the story because the healing is in that emotional connection.
It's so true. In fact, I often think with the couples I work with, it's not about the conflict. It's really about the repair.
Yeah.
It's how well we repair and if we can do it consistently. Because if we can repair, we can manage conflict, but we just aren't good at the repair.
Yeah, it's so true. And we're not good about consistent repair, because again, if this child had repeated evidence of times where he felt like mom didn't show up, then we need repeated repair. There was actually an interesting study that was done on couples, and what they had done is they had taken they'd laid them down on a table and then they put a red X over their eyes, and when that red X appears, they shocked their feet. So then they got rid of the shock, and then they just put the red X over their eyes. And what happened in the brain imaging, right, is that the brain still experienced the pain. And so the takeaway from that is that expected pain is real pain, and so even though you may feel like you've repaired something, like you did the thing the one time, the brain still is expecting the person to not show up. So when you do it again.
So it's almost like you've got to do extra work. I mean, really what I'm hearing is if they are expecting you to not show up, then they're ready again to not be validated, to not be seen in their pain. And so we really have to do additional work to say, no, I am with you. Yeah. You are safe. Your needs matter. and I'm with you in this.
Yeah.
And what an interesting experience, what our brain does. Our brain is wired for protection, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to protect ourselves. So that red X comes, even though there's no shock. Ugh, I'm ready to be, shocked. And so because we want to protect ourselves at all costs.
Right. And I think it gives a lot of hope for the person that's trying to do the repair. It's not that you did it wrong because they're now having this trigger again, right? It's that their nervous system is just looking for that consistency. Like, yeah, you showed up for me that one time, or you said it that one time, and I, it felt good and I believed it. But what about when it happens a second time or a third time?
That's right.
So
it's really being consistent with this as well.
Yeah.
So when you talked about it, we're not validating facts, we're validating emotions and the emotions around the story that's going on with that person. And I want to be really clear that when we say the story they're telling themselves, sometimes we hear that and it's like, well, that's not real. A story feels like it's fake.
Right.
But the story is their experience and it is valid.
Yeah.
To just, again, remember, your perception is your reality. It's real to you. So to recognize that, yes, that is your perception is your reality, period.
Yeah.
Hard stop.
Yes. Sue Johnson has a great quote. She said, I've never seen irrational emotion. But I have seen irrational thinking.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Irrational emotion, they don't exist.
That doesn't exist. Like the emotion always makes sense in the context, that it's given. And it's real. It's like in your body, you're experiencing it. But the thinking part
can be problematic.
Can
yes.
be problematic.
I love that. And Sue Johnson's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but again, if we see that, it's like, oh, it's not irrational. It's actually rational. And again, your lived experience, my lived experience, so different. And you can live in the same household. You can be in relationship with somebody. You can be partnered with somebody and have a very different experience with the same situation.
Yeah.
And that there is room and space for that. And when we can give space and room for that, we can maybe back off a little bit. And I think that's part of it, is backing off and being able to see it from an outside perspective. You and I do parts work with people. And I think one of the benefits of that is it kind of allows us to zoom out a little bit and be an observer versus in the thing, right? We can zoom out and say, there's a part of me that feels this way. And instead of, it is all of me, I'm in it. But if we can, again, zoom out and have a broader perspective, I can hold space for your perspective and maybe validate you around that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
as I was thinking about this conversation today, Amanda, I was thinking back to graduate school. And I remember one of my teachers, she taught the DSM, which is like our Bible for diagnosing, right, as in therapy. And so she was, lots of it was really clinical. But then she said something at the end of the semester, and she said, if you remember nothing else that I taught you, nothing about diagnosing, anything, it is to validate. She said, validate, validate, validate. If you can validate with your clients in your sessions, and I would say to our listeners, in your relationships, then you have gold. You have gold. It feels like the balm that all of us want.
Yeah.
So with that being said, is there anything left that we haven't discussed that feels important that you want to leave our listeners with?
I would maybe just say a thing that shows up a lot when I'm working with, couples or relationships is that when they go to validate their partner, they may say something like, I get why that hurts. And it doesn't quite land. Mm-hmm. It doesn't quite land because even though you may feel in your body like you get that, the person on the other side of that doesn't know how you get that. Right.
Yes.
And so I think maybe just some counsel that I would give is the more specific you can get, the better, the more specific with your behavior. So like, let's just take that couple, for example. Let's say they got in a fight and she, stormed up to the room and he decided to give her space. And so he just gives it, a day or two before he comes and readdresses it. And And so then now they're bringing this up, and she's feeling really hurt by that. And for him to say something, not just like, I get why that hurt you, but that when you went to your room and I didn't come after you, I can see how that felt like I didn't care about you, and how you felt abandoned in that moment when you really needed comfort the most, and I didn't provide that for you.
Yes.
You know?
And that takes some emotional maturity.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because again, and also the woman in the room might be attacking. You always do this. Why do you do this? Right? And then what happens? Everyone's defended. We're just now at odds with each other.
Totally. And his intention was like, oh my gosh, I need to give her some space. Like, she stormed up the stairs and slammed the door. That signal said to me, like, leave her alone. Okay. Like, let her. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't pursue. But really what she needed was that pursuit. And once he could understand that, then, he could really touch into that emotional experience and express some remorse for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we can tap into the emotional experience, that's when we can actually validate with sincerity.
Yeah.
It's not about just trying to say the thing to get them to be okay, to get them to, shut up. No, it's actually validating and seeing them in their pain.
Totally. The words won't track. I mean, you may be able to say the right words, but it is an energetic, felt experience that's going to build enough trust that they then hook into your harness.
I love that. Yeah. It's an energetic experience.
Yeah.
That's why the words we say matter, but the felt experience is what really resonates.
Totally.
And that's what's that's when there's soul to soul connection and soul to soul healing.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember in that same workshop that we ran with couples, like we had an exercise where the other person shared and the other person had to sit there and listen, but just with their body language, and they had to show empathy with their body language so they validated without even words.
Yes.
Right?
And do you remember what happened? There were tears and it felt healing, just the validation of not saying anything, but the body language.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So that part it is so incredibly important.
Right.
It's not just, again, saying the thing to say the thing, but really feeling it. And again, as you went back and we were, talking about that rock climbing analogy, that mother needs to do some caretaking of herself.
Yes.
Right. And
that's the parts work you're talking about, right? Because now she's got to anchor herself like into her higher self on the rock. And then she descends down into that part of her that's feeling criticized and wounded and like not enough, which is a wound probably every mother.
Amen. Amen. It's funny as you said that. I just thought, oh man, that poor mother. You know what I mean? Thinking about trying to manage that because, as you said, I think all of us as mothers have had some of those wounds as well. So, Amanda, so many great thoughts today. I think this is such an important conversation. I think that validation is misunderstood. Yeah. I think the power of validation is profound. And when we can experience it and then give it to other people, our relationships will deepen, our connection will be enriched. But we've got to do some work around differentiating between facts and emotions and understanding that we're validating the emotion, that there's no emotion that is irrational. Sue Johnson said, right? Yes. But she said that there's thinking that is, but emotions are not irrational. Yeah. And, I love that rock climbing analogy of, I've got to harness myself. I got to anchor up. And then I go down with that person. Yeah. And then I attach myself to them. And I'm not just yelling, hey, come on up, you figure yourself out. But I go down in the pit with that person. And that's hard. That requires a lot of emotional regulation on my part to go down with people in their pain. Yeah,
because I got to know I can get back up.
That's right. I got to know that I can climb back out of it. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm super interested, right? And that reminder that the more specific the validation is, the more validating it is, the better it feels, right? And that it's an energetic exchange. It's not just the words we use, but it's that felt experience that matters so much.
Absolutely.
Amanda, thank you so much for the conversation. Yeah. To our listeners, I hope this conversation was empowering for you. I hope you heard something around validation and that you will consider how you connect before you correct, and how you validate those in your circle. And also maybe the validation that you are or are not receiving. Such an important discussion. Thank you again. And we are grateful for you being here, for listening, for sharing this. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.